realize it. I was to unmute myself. Okay. Got that. Got that. Once the world loads. This. Oh my god, can this world load? Oh my, just. Okay. Okay. Think I got all set. Yep. Okay. And of course the world is still loading. Oh, there it goes. Sweet. Also, I apologize for any background noise. My mom and stepdad are watching CSI New York, and I we live in a camper. There's nothing I can do about how the sound travels, and if I ask them to turn it down anymore, I don't think they'll be able to hear it. And now I gotta remember what I was doing yesterday. How far did I get in the quest book? Oh. Okay. Oh, that's right. I unlocked Kitchen Workshop. Okay. I think I should probably grind. I think I'm just gonna grind to get the first page of the quests done, just because that's gonna be probably easier on me. So there we go. Okay. First things first, food. Next up is find an empty spot and unload the inventory. I have so much stuff. Okay, there we go. So let's see. I want these. I'm just gonna take, you know, everything goes, to an extent, everything goes in chests right now. There we go. Okay. Now look at the quest book. Figure out what I'm gonna get myself into here. Which looks like I need that's right, I need the needle and thread. And if I remember correctly, I have like no string. Because I thought I had string. But I only have 2. How much do I need to make the needle? Oh, I only need 1 to do it. Okay. See that, and my sticks. And we'll go over here. Copper needle, just cause. Okay. This whole time, I was stressed thinking I was gonna be able to do that. Really? Okay, that. And I get the string back, essentially. Do I have 5 cotton seeds, or did I plant all my cotton seeds? I think I planted all the cotton seeds I had. Inventory management is still not my strong suit. No matter how many times I play this pack, just... Nope. It was not the strong suit. Oh, hammer. Straight into 2 copper sticks. Okay. Boom. 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 Got my hammer. Got my coffee. Okay. Da, 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 da. It's 4 plates. Well, I'm gonna make 5. Because I know I'll need them. And I know I'll get more, but for right now, it's the easiest way to go. Because I'm gonna need 8 of them for the copper chest. I can get the silicone plates if I remember what chest I put the silicone in. There it is. That's hammer. Okay, get my little chime. I'm gonna go for the mushroom stew for that one, and I'm gonna do this again. Here's a copper chest. Just, yeah, I guess it's just a chest with 8 copper plates. Do I have more copper? Is that all the copper I had? Okay, huh. You know what? I'm gonna do it this way. We're gonna go on a copper hunt. Mostly because this will give me a couple more of those. That, I got torches. Do I have regular cobblestone? Cobblestone monster egg. What is that? Where did I get it? I don't know where that came from. There we go. Regular cobblestone. That. That there. Didn't I just see chests somewhere? Yeah. Take 2 chests out. And for now, we do this. Keep the mushroom stew on me. I did not mean to put the cobblestone in there. Oh, this. Get that repaired up. So I got 3 of those. I got 2 stone AOTs. Okay. Ow. I hurt my throat. Like, I don't think I'm sick, but I do have, like, this, like, cough going on, and it's been driving me insane. Let's see. Forgot what the good Y level for the good Y level for the copper ore is. I think I usually go to about level 40, maybe level 40. I think so. I think that's where. 47, 46, 45. Oh. Okay, this. And now I just use up these hammers in the hopes I find more copper ore. Oh, look, copper ore. Come back for that. There's some iron ore too. Nice. And some coal. Okay. 1, 2, 3. Whoosh. Boom, 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 bam, 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 bam. Okay, there we go. And then bringing into copper. And prosperity ore. Getting attacked by gravel. this would probably be a wise step, is to just kind of throw some torches down there, yeah. And we'll go this way with this third hammer. Should probably really make a point to get to my smeltery just so I can start doubling up on the ores. Because I think that would be smart. Ooh. Oh, I went over one too many. Oh well. Prosperity ore, grab the inferium. Okay. Whoa. Got a little turned around for a second there. Get the coal. Get the clay. And this way we also have a good spot to like start with mining when it comes to Blood Moon. I've been watching a lot of 7 Days to Die lately, and I almost said Horde Night, and I'm like, wrong game. Same concept, wrong game. Iron. Let me turn on my light levels for a hot second here and just get everything as lit up as I'd like it to be. Put it on clay. Didn't want to put that on clay. Sweet. Alright, I'll turn light levels off for now. Ow. Did not mean to hit my microphone, that's for sure. Look at all this clay. Okay, then that goes up there. Well, I think it's safe to say that I'm not going to run out of clay yet. Cautiously. Get some tin while I'm here. Pop in a cough drop, see if that helps me any. So I'm gonna grab the black quartz up too. Is it on the... Grab some tin. Oh, look at that. There's some iron up there, too. Might as well just dig it all out from the bottom up. Now I can reach it. Okay. You know, it is nighttime. I might as well just kind of like stay down here and get this going. I'm gonna put a couple stacks of soapstone, cobblestone up there. And then I'm just gonna start digging this way. Could probably do a little strip mining along here since I know it's a good level to find the copper at. This is what I said. I really should probably keep my light levels on for right now. Just so I can torch up once I start to see the red X's. Okay, let me see something. I'm gonna put iron ore there. That last hit of that. Put my copper ore there, my tin ore there. Those are the only ones I really want to like monitor. So there we go. Now I can keep track of how much of each of those I have. I'm just gonna forget the strip mining idea. That's too monotonous for me right now. I'm just gonna kind of go wild and just zigzag my way through. Which means I do run a chance of missing some ore, but I can always come back and do more. Especially once I have easier ways to mine. Oh look, more clay. Since I don't always feel like going underwater to get clay, I'm just gonna kind of take this opportunity to get this clay. Yeah, generally when you gotta go like, under, if you find clay, it's like underwater, it's a pain to mine a bunch of it. So when I find it underground, I'm just gonna snatch it up. That's a lot of clay I have now. Holy cow. I didn't realize I was collecting it that fast. Let me get at least half a stack of copper. Times like these that I miss vein miner. So I think I'm just gonna let one of my AIoTs break, since I can repair it. Like, I'll have two. I don't need to have two because I can repair it. Ooh, there's at least 6 more copper. But yeah, so the goal is at least like 32 copper right now, just so I can run through the tier 0 main stuff to get other things unlocked. Keep checking to make sure my internet's still being nice and behaving. And if I do run this Inferium orb, because I know there's gonna, I don't, how close am I to the quest that wants it? I will get there. And when they get there, I will be prepared. I also won't say no to more coal and tin. It would be so nice if I could like find like copper ores in bunches as big as I'm finding coal. Yeah, I'll keep going this way. So, like, I know last time I set the world spawn to be where I have my base at, so when I eventually go, like, you know, adventuring, I can just, if I find something cool, I can use the set home command that way. Chalk takes forever to break through. Holy cow. Granted, then again, it is just a stone tool, so. Oop, there we go. Make sure there is more behind it. Okay. I'll grab this. Standing on top of a block while breaking it's probably one of the stupidest Minecraft moves ever, but I live on the edge. More copper! So that should be that's my half stack, and it's daylight again. So theoretically, if I, yep, there we go. And then, just gonna do that, I'm just gonna smelt it all down. So eventually, I'm gonna flatten this out some more, and I think my base, I'm gonna stretch out this way. But then, I'm also gonna build kind of like a, protective layer of sorts around the village. There's 2 villagers there, so that's better than I'm doing in a world that I'm playing offline that is not going that well with the village. Well, anyways. Okay, actually, because I have a tendency to just not do this. Okay, just throw all that stuff up there. Gonna keep that there, that there. Okay, so now I need the, okay, I need those, that. I'm gonna need my hammer. Where'd the hammer go? There's the hammer. Make some more this. I'll make 2 more ingots, and then I can make a copper chest, and that'll actually be helpful because, you know, bigger storage, so. There we go, there's our copper chest. I'm gonna put it right there. I'm gonna put all my clay. Put the clay there for now. Or at least the clay that I had there on me. Then we get the wood, the copper chest upgrade, and oh yeah, right now is when we're starting to do iron. There's 5. Gotta hold on to the tin too. There's some iron plates. Nothing useful there. Nope. And I'm just, you know, casually shushing. Okay, I think I'm just gonna have to smelt down what iron I have. So I'll do that. That's right, I was gonna grab one of these. I'm gonna put it right there. And then I'm gonna do that. So now I got two copper chests. I don't know what to put in them. Inventory management is not high on my list right now. Should it be? Yes. Is it? No. It never is, actually. Okay, if I do that, I'm taking a second to fix up my second monitor view for a minute here so I can actually keep track of everything that I have going. Okay. That. And actually, that's not what I wanted to do. I wanted to do it this way. This way. Thank you. There. Okay. 4 iron plates. Just knock it out. Also, I think this is the way that I get a shulker box too, like down this way eventually. 1 more iron plate. Yeah, because I think this is the... Yeah, that's the shulker quest line right there. Okay, do I got... This is this. You know what? Let's see. This. 3, thank you. Let's do 3 of those. 2 there, 1 there. And we have our advanced crafting table. Which means bigger things. And we'll get another wood to copper chest upgrade. That right there. That. Okay. Now to work my way up this way. Rope. Where's where I have? Wait, I know where I can get it. Let's run over to the village for a second. Do, 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 do. I apparently already emptied that chest out. So, back over to the base. So if that is the case, okay, so there's the tree tap. There's rubber saplings. There's some sap, which means we can run over here. Wait until it gets a couple of those cooked. Oh, 2 rubber, yes, okay. There's our 2 rubber. Six redstone. I had found redstone, right? I thought I had found redstone. Seemed like a vaguely familiar thing that I found, but apparently not. That stays there, that stays there, that stays there. Okay, because I could technically dig down to find redstone, but I don't have what I need to mine the redstone. Not mean to put that there. Okay, okay, let's see. Yeah, I really I could have sworn that redstone was a thing I had found. Wonder. With it being a quest, I don't think so, but it never hurts to check and see if there's leather. Like, it would be cool if, like, the shop page had some redstone, but also made it affordable, I should mention, because I don't have a lot of money. But it doesn't look like it has redstone, so it may be at a standstill for right now. Sure. Oh my, cool. I didn't look at the price of that. Sheesh. Okay, what can I do about this? Or, well, technically this just means we gotta go different line for right now. Suppose I could... That's right, this is just trees. Or saplings. Which I can use birch saplings to do it. And I have a ton of oak saplings. And where did I put my saw? There's my saw. So, and 3 per thing. I'm gonna need 4 of them. And then I'll just make some extras. There we go. And it's always good to just go ahead and make extras in this. Okay, 1 copper, 6 sticks. Oh, I got my copper on me, but I don't have sticks on me. Where are my sticks? See, I knew I had sticks. That one I knew I had. So that. Oh, no, 6 sticks. It goes like that. Okay, so we got the wooden grip. Look at bricks. Okay, so sticks. I need a stone pickaxe, the iron chain, which, if I'm not mistaken, is that. Okay, so iron chain, 2 sticks. Okay, so there's 2 sticks. A stone pickaxe, handle, 4 rope. What else did I need? Okay, I need 4 planks. Oh, look at that. 4 planks right there. So, 2, 3, 4. Stone pickaxe, iron chain, stick, rope, grip, wooden hook. Get another chain, thank you. I want the common loot bag. Maybe I'll get lucky and it'll give me an iron. That'll give me another stone AIoT and a hunting backpack. Just to double check. Okay, I was right. I have not looted anything that'll actually help me get that, redstone. Stay. Okay, and let's see, because how much, like, wood do I have? I have to make another handsaw, but I think I might just make it out of iron, because it does have a little bit of higher durability. So we'll do that. And then, nope, that's not. I need to make sawdust, which means I need this. But. Come on, brain. What am I looking at here? What am I looking for? Sorry, I was seeing if I had any sawdust just chilling already. Anyways, what's 27? 27 it shall get. Gives me more sawdust, but I can't do anything with it yet because I don't have the redstone. And I don't have the string. Okay, you know what? Let's see. I'm gonna take this. I'm gonna take one of these. I'm gonna take this. Actually, that stays with, that stays with. Guess I'll keep a couple sticks with me. Because you never know when you're gonna need sticks. That. Cobblestone on me. bucket with me just in case I run across something that having a bucket would be handy for. Do I have a second bucket? I feel like I do. Yes, I do. So I can get some clay buckets I can break too. Okay. Oh, look, I did have sawdust sitting there. Okay. That's all set. Just go ahead and use this. Don't drop me in water. I don't know what was worse, dropping me in water or trying to bury me in sand. Anyways, that was rude. Somebody outside revving an engine, and I don't know why. I don't know what reason there could be for that at all. Okay. I'm gonna go over. I'm not gonna go to the certain death tower, but it looks like there is an astral sorcery temple up here. Probably wouldn't hurt to grab some sand while I'm here too. But oh, a certain death dungeon has linked up with my temple. But hey, I'm not gonna mess with the dungeon. That's not what I'm about today. I am, however, going to be picky about what I take from things. Just because I do know inventory size is a struggle for me. I want that and that, and I want food. Okay. But yeah, I'm not about to mess with that dungeon. But it looks like there's a village over here. Did I really find a village that easily, that fast this time? Oh, please, 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 let the blacksmith house have a thing. Oh. Ow. Rude. You're rude. Hitting is rude. It is not nice. It's just the plop that bed down to sleep. Yeah, you're staying there. It's got an immersive engineering house. Ooh, look at that. I got another bucket. And then just use that and grab this. Let's see. See, this is how you like. Oh, no, not crouch. I'm gonna sprint. Thank you. Doesn't have exactly what I needed, but now I have a helmet. So, and a chest. It's like free chest. Okay. What else? You know what? What I'm gonna do? Since I don't really want to like entirely tear the one that's at my village down, I don't see the harm in tearing this one down. Actually, I don't have the patience for that. That's gonna take too long. it's wild. This village is like in the desert, but not. Okay, that. There we go. Break that, break that, break that. Oh, my. Well, I was hoping that would have, the blacksmith house would have given me, like, a, iron pickaxe, and I could have gotten some reds done with it. Hello, sir. Actually, I do need to defend Jam Guy. Ah. Okay, you know what? While you have that little fight, there we go. And goodbye. After I take this fence, because I want the fence. The less I have to use resources to craft, the better. At least in my book. Call it working smarter, not harder. But, I think I'm gonna go, you know what, I'll go north. Because, yeah, I'm not gonna mess with that dungeon that was up there with the ladder, because I would surely die very fast with that one. So let's go run this way. Because we can. Yeah, I ain't messing with that thing. I know what those are. I don't like them. Come to think of it, there's a lot of things in this pack that I don't like. When it comes to, like, enemies and stuff. Give myself some more olive stuff. Even though I have a little mini olive tree farm at my base already. Good enough. Is that a windmill? Oh man, oh, I see something up there that can kill me so easily. So what I need to do is just keep running. And also, like, what is that? Besides something else that will probably kill me. Because that's all this game is things that will kill me. For a split second, I thought that pile of rocks was a cyclops. I just want to get out of the savannah. Boing, 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 boing. Bunny rabbits. Every time I'm in any kind of desert and there's bunny rabbits, I'm like always like taking back to the time that my brother and I were playing with my nephew, and we sent my nephew off to get wood. An easy enough task for a child to handle. And instead he came back with like 10 bunny rabbits and no wood. I'm just gonna bust my way in this way, thank you. found Kirby! Oh yeah! Got Kirby. I got Kirby. Get out of my way. Thank you. Well, you know, even if I don't find redstone on this trip, I found Kirby, and I'm gonna call that one a win. Chels, what up? It's been a very, 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 very long time. It was hard to do like pretty much anything all summer because I was literally traveling all summer. Like we left Louisiana in April, and then we went quite literally around the country. Like we went over through Texas, New Mexico, Arizona. When we were in California, I got to go to Disneyland. There's a dragon. I'm not going that way. I don't like the dragons. Although, like, no. Technically, mine under it. No, I'm not gonna risk it. Good loot, yes, but I'm not gonna risk it. Like, we got to see like a whole bunch of family and stuff, but like it was also really tiring because it's such a pain when you live in a camper to basically have to pack up your entire life like every few days and then spend like 5-6 hours in a vehicle. It's but yeah, even if I don't find redstone, I found Kirby. So that completed that quest. You know what? Why would you dump me in water when I RTP? Like, especially when sometimes you, like, take a second to load. You're like, don't, like, die. Lost. What's popping up on the map? It looks like there's something over there. It's also getting close to nighttime, so I may have to slap my emergency bed down and sleep. Hello, little crabs. Ow! What the frick? I didn't do anything to you. Does this have stuff in it that'll kill me? Just gonna inch closer to it and see if, yep. That's a nope. We're gonna nope on out of that one. Ow. So it is time to do this. Boom. Okay. This is. Yeah, screw you, brain slime. Oh my god, Mom! Yeah, it's always fun with not having much like quietness in the camper at nighttime. Okay, I want to find a village that has a blacksmith thing that will have, that will, bless me with an iron pickaxe so I can go get some redstone so I can continue on with unlocking the Tinker's Construct stuff. Okay, this is... RTP has not been kind to me. It's kind of been a jerk to me, and I'm running out of food. I don't know which one of these do I have any food in then. Yes, bread. I guess a melon. There's a food bag. Probably not gonna have anything good in it, but you know. Well, there's a donut. Break that, break that, break that. Oh, there's a pumpkin pie in the food bag. Eat the melon. But how have you been doing? I'm trying to think the last time I managed to, actually, exist while you were streaming, and I can't remember when it was. And I don't know if that's just because my memory sucks, or if it was just that long ago. Ooh, let's not run into the lava. Running into the lava would be bad. Copper. Okay, let's see. Cough hurt. Hey, free meat. I'm gonna take this, because why not? So, I need to find, an iron pickaxe, because I do not have the ability to make one. I can't advance in the quest line I'm looking for without redstone. You know what? I'm gonna RTP it. Why not? Yay! The desert. Again. It's taking a sweet time to load in. Actually, let's go this way. More bunnies. Hero! Bunnies. Look at all the bunnies. Bunny rabbits. Ooh, village. Boing, boing, boing. Please have what I'm looking for. Please have what I'm looking for. No. Oh, immersive engineering, that's a plus. Actually, let's do it this way. Let's just go that I can there. Break it. Just gonna break it. And I'm gonna break it. Okay, do you have a blacksmith? I don't think you have a blacksmith. I'm looking at them now. It's getting frustrating. It's getting annoying, actually. Like, forget frustrating, it's just getting straight up annoying because I need to find redstone. I don't have a way to mine redstone. Figure, find a village, it doesn't have a blacksmith, which is like my best option for getting what I need. So I guess I'm back on the walk again. This will go. See what the pirate ship has to offer me. Maybe it'll have some food. And it's still daylight enough that I'm pretty sure I can safely get the stuff from it without things killing me. Chicken. Nothing. Nothing. Can't even get. I should have alerts on. Are they not working? Just, I don't know. But thank you for the sub. I don't know why alerts aren't working. Like, it's just. Okay, I don't want that. But I do want this down here. Who knows? Everything's being stupid lately. I need to redo my settings, probably. Start with bricks. I'm gonna run over here and get the bucket. We have 4 buckets now. Okay. That, and you know what? Let's go home so I can just get some semblance of organization here. Just because I can. I found Kirby. Okay, where's like an emptiest one so I can just whoosh. I can just whoosh stuff into it. Okay. Let's do this. Please. Dang it. Well, at least I got some more food. That's a plus, I guess. Thank you for the alert. Let's see, this is... Yeah, I don't know why don't know why the alerts aren't working. You can hear my coughing loud and clear too. Ooh. Okay. Let me look at my quest page here. I suppose I could work my way down other routes, but I'm reaching the point where I'm kind of stuck if I don't have an iron pickaxe. I can't make one. Okay, so that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I just need, you know what? So make a ton of those. I'm gonna sit here and I'm gonna let them cook while I figure out how to get an iron pickaxe so I can get some redstone. I suppose I can do this. The wood casing is log, planks, and sticks. Ooh. Bam, 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 bam. Okay, wood casing. Eight iron plates. Do I have 8 iron plates? There's 1. There's some iron. Didn't I have more iron plates? I did. There they are. Okay, so yeah, it's the wood casing. That. That. Oh wait, I need to do this. That. So I have that done. Just smack that there. I love that I did that on one that has a bunch of stuff in it. Oh well. I need to pick up the chest. There we go. Whoosh. Take all that stuff up. Come throw it over here. There we go. There's that. Yay, I got a shulker box. Then just want to take this. If I go get my iron ingots, circle it. Okay, that'll be a little bit easier on storage now too. Or not storage, but like looting and stuff. Having the shulker box. Okay, right, I'm waiting on all these. First things first, make that. Okay, so. Gotta make all my clay armor that I'm probably not even gonna use, but making them completely out of order. This is like what, yeah, I need to make chest plate. So that's 8. 9, 10, 12, 13, 14, 15. Should be 15. 14, 14, and 15. So that should give me just enough to finish that little line of stuff. But let's see, this one's 20 inferium. I know I have 20 inferium. There's 5 of it. There's 28. Okay, nothing else in those, but also 20. Okay, gotta stop mumbling. Okay, so with that, 30 prosperity shards. Do I have 30 prosperity shards? I got 9. This is ridiculous. So can't do that. Can't do that. Can't do that. Can't do that. I want to get this unlocked. And this unlocked. And this unlocked. What's wild is I'd actually have a chance of getting that at least mildly done. Wait. Wait. What happened? Wool? I mean, technically, if it really goes down to it, I can go get wool from the thing, the immersive engineering house. But there, look at that wool cloth. Okay. That. What's 1410? Oh, there's 10. There's 10 ore. There's some more tip plates. There's a block of tin. I think that's my tin. Yeah. Okay. Let's just please, loot bag. I'm begging you, give me some good. Didn't help me at all. That didn't help me at all. Ingot. What's 17 plates? That stepdad just moved something that scared the crap out of me. Where's my hammer? Not sleep time yet. It's not, but now it's sleep time. Jump into bed. Okay, so that. I'm just gonna do that. Always make more. Get another copper chest. And now I'm at a standstill again because I don't have string. Don't have nowhere near enough string. Let's see, what can I do? I could pull on my headphone cord, that's what I could do. That's what I shouldn't do. But I just realized that I guess I could start on the kitchen workshop. So wood tank, 2 bricks, 5 planks, 1 iron. I know I have the wood tank there because there's wood tank, there's some planks, there's some bricks. So with that, and that, and we can at least start working on the kitchen and get some food. I don't know where I'm gonna fully put my kitchen, so for right now, I'll just go there. And I think I want the mortar, because I don't want to make another one. Book. Carrot and a book. Really? Okay, there's a carrot. Wait, what? Why do I not have anything that I think I already have? Like, I could have sworn I had a book. Mistaken, I think that'll complete a quest. But no, I could have sworn I had a book. Do I even have a piece of leather? Do I have a piece of leather? Maybe? Universe, please? Okay, do I have one of the houses over here that has the bookshelves in it? And I could just, like, go steal a book? Or break a bookshelf and... No. 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 Yes. Might as well just take these while I'm here. There we go.
There's a crew member version of it.
Jump, 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 jump. Okay, so carrot and a book gives me the food book, which completes that quest. Honestly, I'm gonna go for just the coin. Look at the monies. Okay, wants a pan. Just stick clay to ingredients. What's in this one? There's clay. Is okay, so stick, clay, ingot. There's the pan. And I want the loot bag. Loot bag gods, please, 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 please be kind and give me what I need. And they did not. You know what, this is gonna be like a just all that up in there. Okay. Let's see.
Yeah.
I'm going to mute myself for a moment while my stepdad's in the kitchen talking. I finally got the iron pickaxe that I have been needing. Also, apologizing now for any background noise because my stepdad is putting dinner leftovers away, and I can't close the door to my room because then otherwise I will boil alive in here because it does not have airflow. But now I get to go way down. Wee, wee. Gonna do it this way because I saw some dark gem ore that now that I have my iron pickaxe, I can get that for a quest. Okay, now I'm gonna make sure to just use my stone one. Just gonna stair step my way on down, kind of. But, you know, being careful not to die. Ooh, Confurium. Don't mind if I do. That. Not too worried about digging up all this clay right there because I actually have, you know, plenty of it. I am, however, going to need this osmium. And that's going the osmium's going to be nice when I get the ore doubling. What are we at? Y level 30. Want to get down to like Y level 12? 11 or 12, around there. I just need to find enough redstone to complete that quest so I can keep moving forward in the quest line. but I will also not hesitate to stop and get this ore. Matter of fact, I was going to utilize that. Okay. I really don't want to, like, step down onto... Oh, shut up, ghost. Haha. Yeah, it's just gonna... Oh, no, 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 no.
This one.
Okay. Okay, I should be good. Should be good now. That was... I don't like those things. Those things were mean. And awful.
Break it. One plate.
Okay. Got my redstone. But it's also nighttime, so I'm not gonna go back above ground just yet.
Guard.
I'm gonna go live again later after they're both in bed and it's not so loud in the background. So, yeah. But until then, I'm gonna send you guys over to Sunshine and then I will be back later tonight when it's a little bit more easier to function in the camper. So, see you later.